That morning, Spongebob was on his way to work. He always took his favorite shortcut through the jellyfish fields so he could get there nice and early. But along the way, he happened to spot a mime performance right on the street. He decided to stop and watch for a bit, along with a small crowd of people. But the moment SpongeBob clapped, everyone else walked away. Then the mime started mimicking every move of an old man who had just finished watching the show. The old man got confused and thought he had a twin with a different skin color, so he decided to head to the salon to match his complexion. After that, the mime started bothering a little kid who was holding a red balloon. He copied the kid's every move and gesture, even trying to cheer him up. But surprise, it turned out the kid wasn't a kid at all. It was actually a full-grown man with a small build. Because the act was so dry and boring, the man decided to just leave. But SpongeBob, he was loving every second of it. He kept clapping and cheering for the mime. So to show appreciation for his one loyal fan, the mime started copying SpongeBob's every move. SpongeBob was absolutely amazed by his talent. No matter what movement SpongeBob did, the mime followed it perfectly, like a mirror image. After a few more moves, SpongeBob dropped a coin into the mime's hat as a thank you for the entertainment, then hurried off to work. But the mime started following him, so SpongeBob decided to walk backward all the way to the Krusty Krab, leading his new friend along. Before long, they arrived. SpongeBob told Squidward that he'd met a mime, but Squidward, as usual, couldn't care less. The mime then started copying Squidward's every move. Annoyed, Squidward stormed off and left the register. SpongeBob went straight to the kitchen to start cooking, but the mime stayed at the cash register. When a female customer came in to order a Krabby Patty, the mime could only imitate Squidward's gestures. He didn't write down the order or tell SpongeBob that someone was waiting. On top of that, he didn't say a single word. Since the customer realized she wasn't going to get her food, she left. Meanwhile, the mime hid. SpongeBob then went to grab the order slips, but when he picked them up, he was shocked to see that the customer had already left without buying anything. So he scolded the mime and told him to do his job properly. Not long after, Mr. Krabs showed up and caught both Squidward and the mime red-handed. He got mad at SpongeBob for hiring a mime who was even more useless than Squidward. But the mime showed off his skills to Mr. Krabs, copying everything he did. SpongeBob even joined in on the act. Mr. Krabs then asked SpongeBob where this guy came from and how he ended up in the restaurant. SpongeBob explained that on his way to work he saw the mime performing, gave him some spare change, and the mime just followed him all the way here. Mr. Krabs was shocked, because everyone knows SpongeBob never gives spare change to mimes. Furious, Mr. Krabs ordered SpongeBob to leave the restaurant and not come back until he got rid of the mime, so the two of them left. Out on the street, SpongeBob asked the mime to go away, but sure enough, just as Mr. Krabs had feared, the mime kept following him everywhere. SpongeBob panicked and ran all the way home. When he got there, he yelled at the mime and warned him to go back to where he came from. Then SpongeBob went inside and slammed the door, but the mime didn't give up. He snuck inside. SpongeBob called Gary for lunch, but to his surprise, the mime was already inside, copying everything Gary did, even his eating motions. Gary got angry and chased him off. The mime then approached SpongeBob to let him know he'd already eaten, even petting him gently. But when SpongeBob turned around, he was terrified to see the mime inside his house. He immediately kicked him out again. That night, as both of them were getting ready for bed, SpongeBob made sure Gary wasn't the mime in disguise. Once Gary meowed, SpongeBob finally felt relieved and went to sleep. The next morning, SpongeBob usually sets his alarm clock, but this time the mime had replaced it. And of course, since mimes don't make sounds, the alarm never went off. When SpongeBob went to look in the mirror to get dressed, he was confused. He couldn't see his own reflection. Then he realized the mime was back in his house again. Furious, he kicked him out once more. Now SpongeBob finally understood what Mr. Krabs had meant. Getting rid of this mime was extremely difficult. He had no idea what to do to make him go away for good. While SpongeBob was feeling frustrated, Gary suggested he ask someone else for help. That's when SpongeBob thought of Plankton. Without wasting any time, he rushed off to find him. and as soon as SpongeBob left, his reflection finally reappeared in the mirror. Long story short, SpongeBob arrived at Plankton's lab and Plankton was terrified to see him show up with the mime. He quickly ran inside and locked the door. He knew that SpongeBob never gives money to mimes, but this time he made the mistake of actually doing it, and now the mime wouldn't stop following him. SpongeBob begged Plankton to help him get rid of the mime for good. Plankton tried helping by using some giant laser machines. SpongeBob and the mime were both scared, and SpongeBob pleaded with Plankton not to use violence. So Plankton tried a second method. He used a robot to try and force the mime to speak, hoping that would make him leave. The plan was to trap him with a net and torture him until he went away. Plankton swung the net and actually caught him, but the mime used a simple scissor gesture to cut through the net and escape. Then Plankton pulled out his laser weapon for a final attack, but the mime used his skills to create an invisible barrier. When the laser fired, it bounced back and destroyed the robot instead. The mime laughed in triumph and walked away. SpongeBob started thinking more carefully about how to make the mime talk. As the mime was walking off, SpongeBob suddenly started mimicking the mime's own style. He pretended to catch him with invisible movements. But unfortunately, the mime escaped again by using the scissor gesture to cut free. Annoyed that his own style was being used against him, the mime decided to leave, but SpongeBob chased after him. The mime climbed up high to get away, but SpongeBob followed. He wanted revenge. Once they were up top, the mime jumped off using a parachute. When SpongeBob followed, the mime cut his parachute strings, sending him falling straight down. The mime just laughed, thinking he'd won. After landing safely, the mime started to walk away, but suddenly he fell right into a trap that SpongeBob had set earlier. He was trapped inside a cage. But the mime didn't stay quiet. He pulled out a chainsaw and destroyed the cage. SpongeBob saw this and ran to avoid him. Wanting payback, the mime threw a grenade and SpongeBob got caught in the blast, splitting his body into pieces. Now it was the mime's turn to run away. SpongeBob wanted revenge, so he challenged the mime to a sword duel. The mime accepted without hesitation. Even Plankton was terrified watching their deadly fight. SpongeBob then cooked a Krabby Patty to lure the mime in. Plankton watched closely, eager to taste even the illusion of a Krabby Patty. When the mime fell into the trap, SpongeBob caught him with ropes, leaving him completely helpless. SpongeBob then asked Plankton, who was trapped under a glass, to carry out the next part of the plan. Plankton brought his broken weapon parts to burn the mime, but he tripped, and the fire hit SpongeBob instead, making him overheat. The mime laughed and walked away, but on his way out, he accidentally stepped on a rock and yelled out a curse word. That meant he had broken the mime's golden rule: absolute silence. Soon after, 4 other mimes showed up. They had found out that one of their members had spoken. Even though he begged for mercy and pleaded not to be kicked out, the rules were the rules. The other mimes took away all his equipment, and worst of all, they even ripped up his official mime license, a brutal move for someone in their profession. Then they left. SpongeBob saw the mime crying and apologized, feeling guilty that his license had been torn because of him. SpongeBob asked what he planned to do next, whether he still wanted to be a mime. But feeling frustrated and with no options left, the mime suddenly decided to switch careers and became a crazy psychotic clown. And just like that, he started attacking SpongeBob. SpongeBob instantly regretted it, because honestly, he'd much rather have the mime following his every move than dealing with a dangerous clown Hi guys. That morning at a Krabby Patty restaurant, Mr. Krabs looked very happy after calling someone. He told Squidward, who was relaxing and reading, that he had figured out how to make more money from his restaurant. However, Squidward didn't really respond to the news, but it was different for SpongeBob because as soon as he heard the news, he became very happy. Mr. Krabs was going to rent out his restaurant for a movie shoot. Of course, that would increase his daily income. Squidward himself thought that method was very boring, as if he didn't want to be involved in that plan. Mr. Krabs then told SpongeBob that the main star of the film, named Marlon Branzino, wanted SpongeBob's shadow. Of course, SpongeBob would give his shadow, which could also dance. SpongeBob was very happy because his shadow could do a shoot together with a celebrity. He showed a photo of Marlon, who would play the role of a fry cook and would teach SpongeBob how to cook properly. Hearing Marlin's name, Squidward went crazy because he knew that Marlin was the greatest actor in the entire ocean. Moreover, it turned out Squidward was a huge fan of Marlin because every action of his was truly total, especially since Marlin could spend 6 months living as a true clarinetist. Because of that, Squidward was crazy about him. He immediately begged Mr. Krabs to be included in the film shoot, but Mr. Krabs refused because Mr. Marlin was only shooting in the kitchen with Spongebob. Then, not long after that, Marlin arrived using a very luxurious vehicle. There were already many fans waiting for him. Even his bodyguards became doormats for their boss's comfort. Until finally, Marlin got out and gave autographs to his fans. Mr. Krabs then welcomed his arrival. He put his arm around Marlin and wanted to promote his merchandise. But Marlin wasn't interested. He only focused on his role as a cook in the kitchen. At that time, Squidward, who was at the cash register, immediately approached Marlin, hoping to get his autograph. In a nervous and clumsy state, he made Marlin lose interest. Finally, the two bodyguards immediately took him away from Marlin's presence and then threw him outside. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs immediately took Marlin to the kitchen. Unexpectedly, when he saw Spongebob cooking, Marlin was very amazed by Spongebob's very authentic shape and face. Moreover, Marlin really acknowledged Spongebob's skill in cooking Krabby Patties. His movements were very smooth and mesmerizing. Marlin then asked Spongebob to teach him to become a skilled cook like him. Of course, Spongebob would teach that famous celebrity. At that moment, Spongebob immediately invited Marlin to mop the floor first. Marlin then followed every step of Spongebob while cleaning the floor. Not only that, Spongebob also told Marlin to clean the toilet, but the most absurd thing was when Bubble Bass was defecating, Spongebob instead told Marlin to scrub that toilet to make it clean. Marlin just obeyed because now Spongebob was his coach. After that, Spongebob then took out the trash together with Marlin, and even though the trash bag was small, Marlin was made quite exhausted. After all those sequences, Spongebob taught the correct way to fry a patty. First, the patty is put into the grill at the right temperature, then after that, just stack the Krabby Patty according to the correct order. When tasting it, Marlin felt that the Krabby Patty was very delicious. Unexpectedly, when Spongebob gave him the spatula, Marlin instantly succeeded in making a Krabby Patty perfectly. Spongebob wasn't surprised because he knew that Marlin had natural ability. Even so, Marlin still felt there was something empty, like something missing. Because of that, Marlin wanted to try making a Krabby Patty again. Long story short, after 7 hours later, Marlin was seen making hundreds of Krabby Patties. And luckily, when making the last Krabby Patty, Marlin could feel the joy of making a Krabby Patty. At that time, Spongebob looked very exhausted and decided to go home immediately because it was already late at night. Morning finally arrived again. Spongebob came to work full of cheerfulness. Then he gave a love peck to Squidward as a sign of friendship. At that moment, Squidward was surprised because he thought that in the kitchen was Spongebob, who had been cooking all day. But after looking into the kitchen, it turned out to be Marlin wearing an outfit similar to Spongebob. Moreover, carefully, Marlin could imitate all of Spongebob's styles. Not only that, he also annoyed Squidward just as much. Not long after that, the director and the film crew arrived and immediately prepared all their equipment for the film shoot. Mr. Krabs appeared after receiving a huge amount of money from Marlin's director. There, the director wanted to install some cables through this wall. At first, Mr. Krabs disagreed, but after being given a lot of money, he finally allowed it. Then one of the film crew went inside that wall. Meanwhile, Spongebob was invited to watch as the film shoot began. Marlin started acting. He used the same dialogue as Spongebob. Every day his job was to struggle in the kitchen to cook delicious Krabby Patties for his customers. His daily life was just like this, but he really enjoyed his life as a cook. Of course, with his presence in the kitchen, he made all his customers' hearts happy. And in short, the shoot ended. All the crew immediately applauded because Marlin's acting was very impressive. This is where Marlin's true arrogant nature began to show. The director immediately told everyone to leave because this place would soon be destroyed. Mr. Krabs was happy because he got a lot of money. Not long after that, an explosion occurred. destroying Mr. Krabs' restaurant. Then the director gave 3 premiere tickets to them. SpongeBob hoped that in the future his restaurant would be busy. Long story short, 3 years after the film production, the 3 of them were seen at the cinema watching Marlin's film. But it turned out that Mr. Krabs' restaurant and Marlin only appeared for a few seconds of screen time, because at that time, 2 robots appeared fighting in front of the restaurant. Finally, Mr. Krabs and his 2 employees immediately left the cinema because they were disappointed with the film, considering that his restaurant only appeared briefly, even though the restaurant had been destroyed by the film crew. At that time, Squidward was also disappointed with Marlin. The 2 of them then met Marlin. It turned out Marlin had never watched his own film. This time, Marlin would act in a film again, but here Marlin would imitate Squidward as a true clarinetist. After seeing his performance, which was very terrible, it finally made Squidward very scared, and he eventually chose to run away. Meanwhile, at the end of the film, Marlin followed Squidward wherever he went, and the film ends.